Marcus Webb was having another perfectly normal conversation with his pet blob when the universe decided to ruin his day. Again. So there I was, right, Grixby, elbow deep in a malfunctioning waste recycler. And Lieutenant Torres has the audacity to ask me if I know what I'm doing. Marcus adjusted his wrench and glanced at the purple, gelatinous creature perched on his toolbox. Like I haven't been keeping this rust bucket of a station running for 3 years while everyone else plays politics. Grixby chirped and shifted from purple to a pleasant shade of green, which Marcus had learned meant either agreement or mild contentment. Hard to tell with aliens sometimes, but after 8 months together, Marcus was pretty sure it was agreement. Grixby was smart like that. Station Kepler-7 hummed around them with the familiar sounds of recycled air and overworked machinery. The maintenance corridors weren't glamorous, but they were honest work, unlike the bureaucratic nonsense happening in the command sections above. Marcus preferred it down here with Grixby, where things made sense and nobody asked stupid questions about requisition forms. You know what doesn't make sense? Marcus continued, tightening a coupling that had been loose for probably 6 months before anyone bothered to report it. Commander Voss spent 20 minutes yesterday lecturing me about proper uniform protocols. 20 minutes, Grixby. Meanwhile, Section C's life support has been running at 87% efficiency for 2 weeks. But does he care about that? Nope. Nope. Grixby pulsed a sympathetic orange and made a sound like a deflating balloon crossed with a contented cat. Marcus had no idea what Grixby actually was or where he'd originally come from. The little guy had just appeared one day in the lower maintenance levels, looking lost and making sad noises. Nobody else seemed to care about one more weird alien creature on a station that housed 17 different species, so Marcus had basically adopted him. Best decision he'd ever made, honestly. Grixby was better company than most of the crew, never complained about Marcus's stories, and had this weird knack for staying calm during emergencies. Plus, he fit perfectly in Marcus's toolkit and seemed to enjoy the work. Webb. The voice echoed down the corridor like the sound of impending paperwork and bad decisions. Marcus didn't need to look up to know that Commander Voss was approaching with his trademark expression of barely contained irritation and military precision. The man walked like he had a regulation manual surgically implanted in his spine. Yes, Commander? Marcus kept working on the coupling, hoping this would be quick. Grixby had gone a cautious yellow and was trying to hide behind a pipe wrench. What is that creature doing in a restricted work area? Voss stood with his hands clasped behind his back, staring at Grixby like he was a violation of at least 12 different codes, which, knowing Voss, he probably was. That's Grixby. He's my partner. Marcus finally looked up, putting on his most innocent expression. Helps me carry tools, keeps me company during long shifts, harmless as they come. Partner? Voss's eyebrow twitched, which was about as emotional as the man ever got. Mr. Webb, that is an unregistered alien life form. Do you have proper documentation for it? Vaccination records? Behavioral assessments? Marcus blinked. Commander, it's basically a smart pet. Look at him. He gestured at Grixby, who had turned a nervous shade of pale blue and was making quiet burbling sounds. Does that look like a threat to station security? Regulations are regulations, Webb. I'll be reviewing the proper protocols for unauthorized biological entities. Voss adjusted his uniform with mechanical precision. In the meantime, ensure your work area remains compliant with station standards. And with that ominous bit of bureaucratic theater, Commander Voss marched off to make someone else's day worse. Marcus watched him go, then looked down at Grixby, who had turned a worried purple again. Don't worry, buddy. Voss just likes to throw his weight around. We'll be fine. But as Marcus returned to his work, he couldn't shake the feeling that Commander Voss had just found his excuse to cause trouble. And in Marcus's experience, when Voss wanted to cause trouble, he usually succeeded. Grixby chirped softly and nestled closer to the toolbox, as if he understood exactly what was coming. Marcus should have known his day was about to get worse when Grixby turned gray before breakfast. The little guy had never turned gray before, and in Marcus's experience, New colors from your alien companion usually meant bad news was incoming. He was right. Regulation 47C, subsection 12, Commander Voss announced, standing in Marcus's quarters at precisely 0800 hours with a tablet full of official-looking documents. All unauthorized biological entities must be surrendered to the xenobiology department for proper containment and study. Marcus, who had been enjoying a rare moment of peace with his morning coffee and Grixby curled up on his lap, stared at Voss like he'd just announced plans to sell the station for scrap metal. You want to do what now? The creature must be transferred to Dr. Vasquez's lab immediately. Voss held out the tablet with the kind of satisfaction usually reserved for people who enjoy ruining perfectly good mornings. This is a matter of station safety and regulatory compliance. Grixby had gone from gray to a deep, distressed purple and was making sounds like a broken, squeaky toy. Marcus could feel the little guy trembling. Commander, with all due respect, that's the dumbest thing I've heard since Lieutenant Porter suggested we fix the gravity generator with duct tape. Marcus stood up, cradling Grixby protectively. He's not unauthorized, he's my partner. He helps with maintenance work. Do you have a permit for keeping alien fauna? Do you have a permit for being a pain in my? Marcus caught himself before he said something that would definitely end up in his personnel file. Look, Grixby's been here for 8 months. He's harmless. Everyone knows him. Everyone knowing about a regulation violation doesn't make it legal, Webb. Voss consulted his tablet with the enthusiasm of someone who'd found a particularly interesting section of tax code. Dr. Vasquez is expecting you in Lab 3 within the hour. 20 minutes later, Marcus found himself in the xenobiology lab, feeling like he was betraying his best friend. Dr. Elena Vasquez was waiting for them, and at least she had the decency to look uncomfortable about the whole situation. I'm sorry about this, Marcus, she said, adjusting her lab coat nervously. Voss brought me the order this morning. My hands are tied. Dr. Vasquez was one of the good ones, actually. She'd been on the station for 2 years, respected the crew, and had never once treated Marcus like he was just a maintenance worker. She was also the only person in the science department who didn't act like alien life forms were just fascinating specimens to be studied. Doc, you know this is ridiculous, right? Marcus looked down at Grixby, who had turned an alarming shade of dark blue and was clinging to his uniform with tiny pseudopods. He's not some dangerous creature. He's practically domesticated. I know. Vasquez sighed and gestured toward a comfortable-looking containment unit that was clearly designed for observation rather than imprisonment. I've set up the best accommodations I can. All environmental controls, entertainment systems, regular monitoring. He'll be comfortable. Comfortable isn't the point, Marcus said, but he could see that Vasquez was trying to help within the confines of an impossible situation. The point is that he belongs with me. Grixby made a sound like a dying whale and turned an even deeper shade of blue. Marcus had never seen him this distressed, not even during the time they'd gotten stuck in a malfunctioning airlock for 6 hours. I promise I'll take good care of him, Vasquez said quietly. And I'll document everything. Maybe I can find some regulation that allows for companion animals or work partners. Marcus knew when he was beaten. Regulations were regulations, and fighting them would just make things worse for everyone involved. He knelt down and gently placed Grixby in the containment unit, feeling like the worst kind of traitor. Hey, buddy. It's just temporary, okay? He tried to keep his voice steady as Grixby pressed against the transparent barrier, cycling through colors of distress Marcus had never seen before. I'm going to figure this out. I promise. Grixby made one last heartbreaking sound that was somewhere between a whimper and a sigh, then curled up in the corner of the containment unit and turned the most depressed shade of gray Marcus had ever seen. Walking back to his quarters without Grixby felt wrong in ways Marcus couldn't properly explain. The corridor seemed too quiet, his toolkit felt incomplete, and he kept expecting to hear familiar chirping sounds that never came. Commander Voss had won this round, but Marcus Webb wasn't the kind of person who gave up easily. Grixby was coming home, one way or another. Even if Marcus had to read every regulation manual on the station to make it happen. 48 hours without Grixby, and Marcus was discovering that his life had apparently been held together by alien companionship and sheer spite. The spite was still there, but everything else was falling apart. Temperature regulation in Section D is acting up again, he muttered to himself, crawling through a maintenance shaft that felt way too empty without a purple blob offering moral support. Third time this week. What's wrong with this stupid station? The answer Marcus was beginning to suspect was everything. It had started small. A few computer glitches here and there, some minor fluctuations in the life support systems, nothing that couldn't be handled with routine maintenance. But routine maintenance was becoming less routine and more like playing whack-a-mole with increasingly weird problems. The gravity in Section C kept fluctuating by 2% every few hours. The water recycling system was producing perfectly clean water that tasted faintly of strawberries, which was both inexplicable and deeply unsettling. And the main computer had started displaying error messages in what appeared to be alien hieroglyphics before switching back to standard text. Marcus emerged from the maintenance shaft covered in dust and thoroughly irritated with the universe in general. He'd been working 16-hour shifts trying to keep up with all the system failures, and he was pretty sure he'd forgotten to eat lunch again. His communicator buzzed. "Webb, report to Lab 3 immediately," came Dr. Vasquez's voice, and she sounded worried. Marcus found her in the lab, staring at a series of readings that made absolutely no sense. Grixby was in his containment unit, looking even more depressed than when Marcus had left him. The little guy had been gray for 2 days straight, barely responding to external stimuli. "Marcus, I need to show you something." Vasquez pulled up a series of charts on her workstation. These are readings from Grixby's emotional state monitors, correlated with the station's system reports. Marcus looked at the charts, then at Grixby, then back at the charts. "Doc, I'm a maintenance worker, not a scientist. You're going to have to explain this in small words. Every time Grixby shows signs of distress, we get system anomalies somewhere on the station." Vasquez highlighted several data points with a stylus. The correlation is almost perfect. When he's calm, everything runs smoothly. When he's upset, things break. Marcus finished, the pieces clicking into place. "That's why the station's been falling apart since you locked him up." "I think so. But I can't get Commander Voss to listen to me. He thinks I'm being overly sentimental about an alien specimen." Vasquez looked frustrated and tired. "He's ordered increased containment protocols and wants to transfer Grixby to a deep space research facility." Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. "Over my dead body." Before Vasquez could respond, the lights flickered and an alarm started blaring. The station's intercom crackled to life with Commander Voss's voice, tight with controlled panic. "All personnel to emergency stations. We have a critical system failure in the main reactor core. This is not a drill." Marcus and Vasquez looked at each other, then at Grixby, who had turned a shade of purple so dark it was almost black. "That's a new color," Marcus said grimly. "That's a very bad color," Vasquez agreed. The station shuddered around them. A deep vibration that meant something important had just broken in a very expensive way. Marcus's communicator erupted with damage reports from every section of the station. Life support failing in Section E. Gravity generators offline in the docking bays. Computer system cycling through random reboots. And in the middle of it all, Grixby curled up in his containment unit, radiating misery in wavelengths that apparently translated directly into mechanical failure. "We have to tell Voss," Vasquez said, but Marcus was already shaking his head. "He won't listen. Not until the station's in pieces around his ears." Marcus looked at the readings again, then at his friend trapped behind transparent barriers. "How long until that research transfer?" 6 hours. The transport ship is already en route." Marcus felt his jaw clench. 6 hours until they took Grixby away forever, while the station fell apart around them because a career bureaucrat couldn't admit that maybe, just maybe, some things were more important than regulation compliance. The station shuddered again, harder this time, and Marcus made a decision that was probably going to get him thrown in the brig. If Commander Voss wanted to play by the book, fine. But Marcus Webb had never been much of a reader anyway. "Doc," he said, checking his toolkit and trying to look like he wasn't planning anything that violated several dozen station policies. "How attached are you to your security clearance?" Breaking into a xenobiology lab turned out to be surprisingly easy when the station's security systems were too busy having nervous breakdowns to properly monitor unauthorized access. Marcus had expected more resistance, but apparently widespread system failures made excellent cover for minor acts of rebellion. "This is a terrible idea," Dr. Vasquez whispered as she used her access codes to override the containment unit locks. "If Voss finds out I helped you." "Voss can file a complaint with the Cosmic Customer Service Department," Marcus replied, carefully lifting Grixby out of his prison. The little guy immediately perked up, cycling through several shades of purple, before settling on a hopeful green. "Hey there, buddy, miss me?" Grixby made a sound like a purring engine and wrapped himself around Marcus's arm, finally looking like himself again for the first time in 2 days. And almost immediately, the light stopped flickering overhead. "Okay, that's definitely not a coincidence," Vasquez muttered, checking her readings. "Marcus, I think Grixby's species might be naturally symbiotic. They bond with other life forms and unconsciously interface with their environment. In small words, Doc, he's been keeping the station running without anyone knowing it. When you separated him from his bonded partner, that's you, by the way, he went into distress and started unconsciously sabotaging everything around him." Marcus looked down at Grixby, who was now a contented shade of blue-green and humming softly. "So you're saying my pet blob is actually some kind of living maintenance system? More like a living emotional interface. His species probably evolved a bond with technology through emotional resonance. When he's happy and calm, everything around him works better. When he's distressed, everything breaks." Marcus felt a mix of pride and concern. "So Grixby's been helping me fix things this whole time?" "I think he's been preventing them from breaking in the first place." The station's intercom crackled to life again, and Commander Voss's voice was definitely less controlled than usual. "All maintenance personnel to emergency stations immediately. We have multiple critical failures in approximately 30 minutes before we lose orbital stability." Marcus and Vasquez looked at each other, then at Grixby, who had turned an alarmed shade of orange. 30 minutes to save the station," Marcus said. "No pressure or anything." They were halfway to the main computer core when Commander Voss found them, flanked by 2 security officers and wearing an expression that suggested he was about to have someone thrown out an airlock. "Webb, what the hell do you think you're doing?" Voss's voice echoed through the corridor as he spotted Grixby wrapped around Marcus's arm. "That creature is supposed to be in containment." "That creature is the only thing keeping this station from becoming space debris," Marcus shot back, not slowing down. "And if you want to live through the next 20 minutes, you'll let me get him to the main computer. You're under arrest for violation of containment protocols and—" The station lurched violently to one side, throwing everyone against the bulkhead. Warning lights flashed red, and the artificial gravity flickered ominously. 15 minutes to orbital decay, came the automated announcement that nobody wanted to hear. Marcus struggled to his feet, checking to make sure Grixby was okay. The little guy had turned a determined shade of bright blue, and was making urgent chirping sounds. "He wants to help," Vasquez said, reading her portable scanner. "His biometric readings are off the charts. He knows what's wrong." Commander Voss looked between them, his regulation manual apparently not covering situations where alien pets turned out to be critical infrastructure. "Explain, quickly." "Grixby's species bonds emotionally with their environment," Vasquez said rapidly. "He's been unconsciously maintaining station systems for months. When you separated him from Marcus, his distress caused cascading system failures." "That's impossible." 10 minutes to orbital decay. Grixby made an increasingly urgent series of sounds and started pulling Marcus toward the computer core access panel. "Impossible or not," Marcus said, "do you want to bet the station on your regulation manual?" For the first time since Marcus had known him, Commander Voss looked genuinely uncertain. and that uncertainty was about to either save them all or get them killed in the most bureaucratically ironic way possible. Marcus had imagined many ways he might die in space, but trying to convince an alien blob to save a station while a career bureaucrat watches in horror had never made the list. Yet here he was, kneeling next to the main computer core while Grixby turned colors that definitely weren't in any manual. "Okay, buddy, I need you to do that thing you do," Marcus said, gently placing Grixby near the main interface panel. "You know, the keeping everything from exploding thing." Grixby pulsed a nervous yellow and made sounds like a computer modem having an existential crisis. 5 minutes to orbital decay, announced the station's cheerfully unhelpful automated voice. "He's scared," Dr. Vasquez said, monitoring her readings. "His stress levels are still elevated from the separation. He needs to be calm to properly interface with the systems." Commander Voss, who had apparently decided that survival trumped regulations, was pacing behind them like a caged predator. "Can't you just plug him in or something?" "He's not a USB cable." "Commander," Marcus replied, trying to project calm while internally panicking. "Grixby, listen to me. Remember that time we fixed the water recycler in Section B? You helped me figure out which pipe was backwards. And the gravity generator last month? You knew exactly which coupling was loose." Grixby's color shifted to a slightly more hopeful purple, and several of the error lights on the main console flickered from red to yellow. "It's working," Vasquez whispered. "His emotional state is stabilizing and the core systems are responding. 3 minutes to orbital decay." "Okay, that's still not great," Marcus muttered. He knelt down closer to Grixby, who was now partially merged with the interface panel in a way that was either beautiful or deeply disturbing. "Come on, little guy. I know this is scary, but I'm right here. We're partners, remember?" Grixby made a sound like singing crystal and suddenly blazed with colors Marcus had never seen before. The main computer console lit up like a Christmas tree, data flowing across screens faster than human eyes could follow. "He's interfacing directly with the station's central processing unit," Vasquez said in amazement. "The computational power required for this should be impossible for an organism his size." "Maybe his species doesn't think in terms of size limitations," Marcus suggested, watching Grixby work with a mixture of pride and worry. "Maybe they think in terms of emotional connections." The station stopped shaking. The red warning lights shifted to yellow, then green. Life support systems came back online with the satisfied hum of machinery that was finally working properly. 2 minutes to orbital decay. "Come on, Grixby," Marcus whispered. "I know you can do this." Grixby pulsed once, twice, then blazed with light so bright it forced everyone to look away. When Marcus could see again, every system on the station was running in perfect harmony, and Grixby had turned a shade of gold that seemed to radiate contentment. "Orbital stability restored," announced the automated voice, sounding almost surprised. "All systems nominal." Marcus carefully scooped Grixby up from the interface panel, and the little guy immediately curled up in his hands, exhausted but proud. He was cycling through soft, happy colors and making sounds like a contented cat. "Well," Commander Voss said after a long moment of silence, "that was definitely not covered in the regulation manual." Dr. Vasquez was staring at her readings in amazement. The computational complexity of what he just accomplished, it's like he turned the entire station into an extension of his nervous system. The level of integration is beyond anything we thought possible. "So what you're saying," Marcus said, gently stroking Grixby's surface, "is that my pet blob just saved all our lives by having feelings about it." "That's actually a pretty accurate summary, yes." Commander Voss cleared his throat, looking like a man who was about to make a decision that would give him administrative nightmares for years to come. "Mr. Webb, I believe we need to discuss some changes to your job description." Marcus looked down at Grixby, who was now a smug shade of purple that clearly meant "I told you so." "Yeah," Marcus said, grinning for the first time in days. "I think we do." "Why?" 3 weeks later, Mater, Marcus Webb found himself in the surreal position of sitting across from a galactic bureaucrat who was trying very hard to pretend that filling out paperwork for sick An interspecies emotional support and systems integration specialist was a perfectly normal part of her job. So the alien life form will be classified as essential personnel, Administrator Chen said, stylus poised over her tablet while Grixby perched on Marcus's shoulder, cycling through pleased shades of blue. With full station privileges, custom quarters, and a salary equivalent to a senior systems analyst. He prefers the title critical systems consultant, Marcus replied, keeping a straight face. And he wants his salary paid in premium organic compounds and occasional head scratches. Administrator Chen blinked twice, added a note to her file, and continued. Your new position as Senior Maintenance Specialist and Alien Liaison comes with a 40% salary increase, expanded authority over station systems, and apparently the right to ignore regulations when the fate of the station hangs in the balance. That last part was Commander Voss's idea, Marcus said. Turns out near-death experiences make people surprisingly flexible about protocol. Speaking of Commander Voss, the man himself was standing nearby, looking like he'd aged 5 years and 3 weeks, but was somehow more relaxed than Marcus had ever seen him. Facing imminent death had apparently given him some perspective on the relative importance of regulation compliance versus continued existence. The new protocols are straightforward, Voss said, consulting his tablet with less rigid precision than usual. Grixby is authorized for all areas of the station, with Marcus as his designated handler and interpreter. Dr. Vasquez will continue her research on interspecies bonding, with full cooperation from both subjects. Dr. Vasquez, who had been officially commended for her innovative xenobiological crisis management, was practically vibrating with excitement about her new research project. The implications are extraordinary. If Grixby's species naturally bonds with technological systems, they could revolutionize space travel, planetary management, even artificial intelligence development. Let's maybe focus on keeping one station running before we start revolutionizing the galaxy, Marcus suggested, though he was privately proud of Grixby's newfound fame. The little guy had taken to his celebrity status with typical grace, which meant he mostly ignored the attention and continued helping Marcus with routine maintenance. The only real difference was that now other crew members would stop and say hello instead of giving them weird looks. The research transport has been canceled, Administrator Chen noted. Instead, we're establishing a new xenobiology research program here on Station Kepler-7, with you two as the primary subjects of study. Subjects of partnership, Marcus corrected. We're partners, not specimens. Partners, Chen agreed, making another note. And finally, your new quarters in Section A have been equipped with custom environmental controls and a direct interface port for Grixby systems integration work. Marcus raised an eyebrow. We get fancy quarters now? You get the quarters befitting the people who saved the station, Voss said dryly. Plus, maintenance response time improves significantly when the senior maintenance specialist lives in the same section as the critical systems. 2 hours later, Marcus found himself in quarters that were approximately 3 times the size of his old ones, complete with a workstation designed specifically for human-alien collaboration and a kitchenette that Grixby had immediately claimed as his own personal space. Not bad for a maintenance worker and his pet blob, Marcus said, settling into a chair that was actually comfortable for the first time in his career. Grixby made a sound that was definitely protest at being called a pet blob, cycling through indignant shades of orange before settling on amused purple. Sorry, critical systems consultant, Marcus corrected. Happy now? A soft chime indicated an incoming message. Marcus checked his communicator and grinned. Look at this, Grixby. 3 different stations have put in requests for consulting visits. Apparently, word gets around fast when you save a station by having an emotional breakdown. Grixby turned a smug shade of gold and made sounds like laughter. Yeah, I know. Who would have thought that caring about things could be a marketable skill? Marcus leaned back in his chair, looking around their new quarters. Think we can handle being famous? Grixby considered this, cycling through several thoughtful colors before settling on determined blue and chirping confidently. You're right, Marcus said, reaching over to gently pat his partner's surface. As long as we're together, we can handle anything the universe throws at us. Outside their new quarters, Station Kepler-7 hummed along in perfect harmony, its systems maintained by the galaxy's most unlikely partnership. And if the other crew members had finally learned to respect the bond between a sarcastic maintenance worker and his emotionally gifted alien friend, well, that was just the universe finally starting to make sense. Some regulations, Marcus reflected, were meant to be rewritten anyway.